On December 8, 1942, New Zealand would experience the deadliest fire in the nation's history up to that point, when Ward 5 of the Seacliff Lunatic Asylum was set ablaze. While trying desperately to rescue the residents of the ward, the staff of the mental hospital quickly realized the futility of their efforts and the grave errors that were made, which rendered them helpless to save those trapped within. The Seacliff Lunatic Asylum, which would go on to be mostly known as the Seacliff Mental Hospital, was an enormous psychiatric hospital complex with an utterly palatial main building located just outside of Dunedin, New Zealand. It was designed by famous architect Robert Arthur Lawson. The designer of the asylum was originally from Scotland and had emigrated to New Zealand in 1862, where he opened his architecture firm and became one of the country's most prominent architects. He was known for his heavy use of the Gothic Revival style, as evidenced in some of his other works, including the Larnac Castle and First Church. The decision to build the Grand Psychiatric Hospital stemmed from the overburdening of the area's current facilities due to the population explosion caused by the Otago gold rush of the 1860s. Like most of the infrastructure in the region, the Littlebourne Mental Asylum could not adequately serve the needs of the community following its growth, so plans for the much larger Seacliff Asylum were created. A swath of land was identified and proposed to be the building grounds for the hospital. Shortly after, a geological survey was conducted to check the land for suitability. The director of the survey concluded that the location was not fit for the structure, as the ground there was unstable. Nonetheless, the hospital was built on those grounds. The Seacliff Asylum opened in 1884, and from very early on it was clear there were issues with the structure. In 1887, just 3 years after its opening, a minor landslide caused significant damage to the north wing of the main building. An official inquiry into the event found Robert Lawson, the architect, to blame, citing that he was negligent and incompetent, thus not only ending his relationship with the asylum, but also effectively ending his career due to the damage to his reputation. Lawson went on to publicly defend himself, saying, "The Seacliff Asylum building stands as firm and solid, and without any sign of settlement or movement throughout, today, and is likely so to stand, as any building in New Zealand. This statement, I challenge any inspector, or deputy inspector, or in fact, any other man to contradict, who has eyes to see and head to comprehend what he sees." Though Lawson denied being responsible for the collapse, it wasn't the only issue he had experienced with one of his designs. Inadequacies in his design for First Church allowed water to seep into the building, causing significant issues, including roof-bearing timbers to rot less than 20 years after its construction. Despite the issues with the Seacliff Asylum's building, it was repaired and continued to operate for several decades. On the evening of December 8, 1942, a tragic scene unfolded. A 2-story wooden structure that was separate from the main building, Ward 5, housed female psychiatric patients in both individual rooms and a 20-bed dormitory. Located about 70 yards from Ward 5, Attendant Henderson was in a residential block known as The Ranch. Having a direct line of sight, Henderson peered over toward the ward. Much to his horror, he noticed a fire burning in the unattended building. Acting quickly, he ran to ring the fire alarm outside of the assistant medical officer's quarters to alert the on-site fire brigade. He then rushed to the facility's fire station and began running the fire hoses to the hydrants. The fire brigade, led by Captain Driscoll, swiftly arrived on scene and took control of the situation. When he made it to the building, Captain Driscoll described it as already being a mass of flames. Seeing an open window on the east side of the ward, he ripped the metal grate from the wall and pulled one of the residents to safety. A ladder was used to pull another victim from a window on the second floor. With all but 2 of the residents still inside, the already raging fire spread rapidly through the building, and despite their valiant attempts, the blaze was far too intense to permit entry to the rescuers, and their urgent attempts to douse the flames did little to help. In under 1 hour, the entire building was reduced to a pile of ash, It should be noted, while their efforts to save those trapped in Ward 5 did not succeed, they were not in vain. They successfully prevented the fire from spreading to other buildings in the compound, as was evidenced by the walls of adjoining buildings being scorched and blackened by the fierce flames. A few weeks later, on December 23, 1942, a warrant was issued to create the Commission upon Fire at Seacliff to investigate the fire. The findings of the commission, which were released in March of 1943, revealed the horrifying details of what proved to be a completely avoidable disaster. As evidence was collected for the circumstances surrounding the fire and subsequent rescue efforts, the inadequacy of their fire safety practices became disturbingly clear. Partially as a result of World War II, which was currently underway, there was a significant shortage of nursing staff throughout the entire country. As a consequence, Ward 5 did not have any staff attending the building during the evening. Instead, a matron from Ward 2, which was the brick building directly adjacent to Ward 5, would perform hourly visits to check up on things. So, in the event that things went wrong, there would almost certainly be a delay in response from the hospital staff. The ward also did not have an automatic fire alarm. They instead had a manual alarm that had to be pulled in the event of an emergency. However, this alarm was locked behind a shutter that could only be opened by one of the nursing staff possessing the key. Similarly, each patient room and the dormitory were locked each night, and they featured shutters on the windows which were locked with a key that could only be opened from inside. So there was absolutely no way for rescuers to release them from the outside of the building. As it turns out, the two residents who were rescued from the building had special privileges that allowed them to have their windows open. This is the only reason they survived. The design of the building was found to be woefully ill-equipped to protect against fire. The entire structure was made of wood. The rafters in the roof contained no fire blocking. They were uninterrupted from end to end, and the solid wooden floors were waxed. These factors ensured the rapid spread and intensity of the fire that swept through Ward 5. In the final report issued by the commission investigating the fire, they made their opinions very clear regarding the lack of thought toward fire safety in stating, "We find it difficult to think the design of such a building, even in 1908, would have been approved by a competent architect." The report also praised the response and actions of the fire brigade, stating that they had acted efficiently to carry out their duties. However, they found that the equipment they were provided was insufficient, including the fact that the water pressure was too low to effectively battle such a fire. The ward burned so quickly and intensely that they found it impossible to determine the cause. Specifically, they concluded, "From the foregoing, it is clear the fire was, when first discovered, of such magnitude and its spread so rapid that we have found it impossible to determine in which part of the building it originated. The opinion we have formed is that it originated inside the building, probably on the first floor towards the northern end. The building was completely burned to the ground, and no expert was able to assist us in definitely stating where the fire originated. In dealing with the possible, we cannot say probable, cause of the fire, we come into the realm of conjecture." Sidney Ewan Kershaw, building inspector of the Public Works Department, said he had reported the unsatisfactory condition of the fire alarm system several years earlier in 1939, but no action was taken to correct it. Additionally, several issues were reported that were testaments to the unstable ground that plagued the building from the very beginning, including noting that the main building was a mass of cracks and that several of the buildings were out of alignment. In all, 37 women perished, making it, at that point, the deadliest fire in the history of New Zealand. It's believed that most of them likely succumbed to asphyxiation by smoke inhalation. Sadly, little changed as a result of the fire and subsequent inquiry. The asylum continued to operate for several years after the disaster. The main building was demolished in 1959 after further movement of the earth below the structure made it a danger. Eventually, Seacliff slowly relocated their patients to Cherry Farm Hospital, a process that was sped up after author and former patient at Seacliff, Janet Frame, gained fame and began reporting the horrifying practices at the psychiatric hospital, including severe physical abuse, lobotomy, and forced unsexing of the patients. Frame herself stated she barely escaped lobotomy herself, and only did so because of her newly gained reputation as a writer. The Seacliff Asylum was finally closed in 1973. In society, we place a great deal of trust in the hands of healthcare professionals, those who care for us in hospital and those who provide us medicine. Unfortunately, as evidenced by the Seacliff Asylum fire, this trust at times can make us vulnerable, even when there's no ill intent. To explore another horrifying example of this, watch my video on the elixir sulfanilamide incident that occurred when medicine tainted with poison was mass-produced and distributed throughout the United States, leading to widespread illness and death. Thanks for watching. Until next time.